All right, so let's get started. So there's this belief that science and reason is somehow an enemy of wonder and awe. And in particular, there's this belief that atheism robs the world of magic. And what I want to talk about today, I don't want to give away the end of the talk, but I'll go ahead and give away the end of the talk. What I want to talk about today is, I think that's wrong. And the goal of the talk that I'm giving today is to convince you that you can have wonder and awe in a world without magic. That science and reason is enough to make the world that we live in, pretty wonderful. So let me start by let me give the standard quotes that people use when they talk about robbing the world of magic. This is my favorite one. This is from the Dawkins book, Unweaving the Rainbow, but it's from a famous poem by John Keats, where he writes, here we go, "Do not all charms fly at the mere touch of cold philosophy? There was an awful rainbow once in heaven. We know her woof, her texture she is given. In the dull catalogue of common things, philosophy will clip an angel's wings, conquer all mysteries by rule and line, empty the haunted air, the gnome's mind, unweave a rainbow." So this is great. There's all sorts of fun stuff going on here. Notice that there's ghosts involved. He has the haunted mind, and there's gnomes. He has gnomes running around. He has the J.R. Tolkien-like gnomes in the mind here. But the thing that really I think most people pull out of this poetry is this idea of cold philosophy and the idea of unweaving the rainbow, where you're taking something awesome in the biblical sense of awesome, a rainbow in the sky, and you're pulling all of the magic out of it by explaining it through physics or whatever. You've taken, all the magic out of the world. So there's another quote that people always fling at scientists all the time. I'm sure you've heard this over and over again. This is from Shakespeare, right? This is from Hamlet, right after Hamlet has seen the ghost. He's meeting with Horatio, and he says, "There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy." And of course, the idea there is that Horatio has a very limited view of the world, and if he just knew how, magical and magnificent it was, he would have a greater experience of life. All right, so I have a background in analytic philosophy, so I have one of those cold hearts, so I always like to start from definitions. And so I wanted to, let's talk a little bit about the definition of the word wonder and the definition of the word awe. Starting with the word wonder, the Merriam-Webster dictionary defines wonder like this. According to the dictionary, wonder is a feeling of surprise, mingled with admiration, caused by something beautiful, unexpected, unfamiliar, or inexplicable. So that's what wonder is. Awe, which is very closely related, is a feeling of reverential respect mixed with fear or wonder. So obviously there's a connection between awe and wonder. But the roots of awe is in, terror and dread. That's really where the word awesome means. It means terror or dread. So I always think it's funny when listening to the song, everything is awesome. And I think of all those Lego creatures cowering in fear as the, but obviously that's not what they mean, but they're the original sense of awesome is that, fearing, that feeling of fear that we've changed a little in the way we talk about it now. So I think if I was to analyze what's going on there in the word wonder, I think part of the definition, an important component of wonder has to be something unexpected, right? Has to be a surprise, like a magic trick. There has to be some sort of surprise involved in it. And it has to be a good thing. It can't be a bad thing. If we found out right now that a tsunami was, coming to crush us all in this building right now, we'd all die a miserable death, that wouldn't be wonderful. That would be kind of bad. We wouldn't want that to happen. The other thing is there has to be a sense of mystery to have wonder. There has to be a sense of mysteriousness. And finally, and this is more part of awe than part of wonder, there is that sense of terror at something bigger than yourself, at a sense of your smallness, or there's some sort of awesome power around you. I think those are all parts of wonder and terror. Now, I want to talk a little bit, this might seem like a digression, but I think it'll make sense in a moment. I want to talk about Narnia. And I'm assuming all of you have read, the Chronicles of Narnia, the Lion, Witch, or have at least seen the movie Narnia. I think it'll make sense, well, when I'm talking about Narnia in a moment, But the history of Narnia is really interesting, how it was written, what motivated the author to write it. Narnia, of course, was written by C.S. Lewis. And C.S. Lewis was an atheist until he reached the age of 32. And then he went through a conversion. And I think it's interesting, one of the people who were involved in his conversion over to Christianity was J.R. Tolkien, of course, who created The Lord of the Rings. And I always think it's, it's amazing to me to think of these two people at Oxford staying up late at night, weaving these fantasies of hobbits and, demons and all this stuff in Narnia. But they were very religious. They were Oxford professors. So after C.S. Lewis went through his conversion, he started to write a number of proofs for the existence of God. He started to write a lot of, he wrote a book called Miracles, and became a very popular writer in the religious community. And after he wrote Miracles, he presented one of his main arguments for the existence of God to the Oxford Socratic Club. And at the time, Elizabeth Anscombe, who I don't know if you know Elizabeth Anscombe, she's one of my heroes. She studied under Wittgenstein. But according to C.S. Lewis, Anscombe obliterated, that was his own words, obliterated his argument for the existence of God, for the proof for the existence of God. And at that point, C.S. Lewis turned away from trying to come up with a basis for his belief. And that's when he started to write the books of Narnia. What he did is he ran into, back into his childhood, escaped out of the rational world to be able to reintroduce that magic again. And so this is a really interesting story to me. And the reason I'm bringing it up here is it really shows the importance of magic, of that need for magic for people, that you really need that in your life to have that, extra sense of mystery. And in fact, at some points, it almost sounded like C.S. Lewis was using Narnia as a proof for the existence of God, because what he said was, well, let me read you the quote. What he wrote once was, "If I find in myself a desire which no experience in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that I was made for another world." Which is very interesting. And so what he's really saying here is, given that I have such a need for wonder and magic, the fact that this world doesn't provide it for me, in some sense gives me this sense that there must be a greater world beyond what we can see. There must be heaven and, gods and all that kind of stuff. Narnia is a magical story. I mean, I still remember the scene in Narnia where, Lucy is going through the wardrobe, she's moving the jackets apart, she goes through and she steps into, the other land, and it's covered with snow, and you have, what's his name, Tumnus. You have Tumnus, the half man, half goat, comes up, and, you're in magic world now. It's very cool. It's very much like in The Wizard of Oz, where Dorothy is. She comes from the black and white Kansas world, and she's flown into the air, and it's a tornado or hurricane. I don't know, I'm not from the central United States, but it's tornado, thank you. Tornado, twister, thank you, that's even better. So when the house goes falling down, and there's that scene, right, where she first opens up the door, and all of a sudden the whole world has color for the first time. Up until that scene in the movie, they make everything, all the film black and white. But as soon as those munchkins start singing, they have the colors show up, and everyone's singing, and everyone's happy. It's a really amazing scene. But imagine if all of a sudden Elizabeth Anscombe, remember the person who obliterated C.S. Lewis's arguments, that she comes marching onto the set, and she says, "Okay, there can't be any flying monkeys. I'm sorry, no flying monkeys in Wizard of Oz, because, flying monkeys don't exist. And a talking Tin Man? What are you talking about? Tin Men can't talk, or, you can't have a scarecrow. All that stuff has to go away. That would rob the story of any fascination or magic. And there's a certain sense in which I understand the religious need to believe that there's more to the world than dreamt of in our philosophy. There's more that it's almost like taking all the color out of the world by taking all the magic out of the world. And I understand that. I understand that inclination. And what I want to try to do today is I'm going to do a little experiment. I'm going to do an experiment here where I'm going to try to reintroduce, not the magic, right, but reintroduce some of that wonder and awe right here in this semi-dingy, well, I shouldn't say dingy, this room in Seattle with the little bit of rain outside. So we're going to do a little experiment now to see if we can reintroduce some of that wonder. Here we go. All right, so I want everyone to close your eyes. Just close your eyes. Everyone close your eyes. You too, Ada. You need to close your eyes over there. Okay. All right. Now try to be as still as possible. Be as quiet as possible. Don't move your little toe. Try to breathe slowly. Try not to move at all. Okay, good. No sound. Shh. Yeah, you're doing good. All right. So be completely still. All right. Now, would it shock you to know right now that you're moving at 1,000 miles per hour? So you can open your eyes. So right now we're, of course, sitting on the planet Earth. And what's the Earth doing? It's spinning around its axis at 1,000 miles per hour. Now, you kind of, you have a vague sense of knowing that, right? That we're, everyone knows the Earth is spinning. But if you think about it for a moment, 1,000 miles an hour is very, very fast. The land speed record was, what was it? It was 763 miles. It was set back in 1997. That's the fastest anyone has ever drove a car across the land. Now we're going, much faster than that, just sitting here in Seattle. There's these awesome forces around us, moving things, and we're in the grip of these forces, natural forces that are causing us to go at incredible speeds. But there's more, right? Not only is the Earth spinning around on its axis, the Earth is also rotating around the sun, right? And right now it's traveling at a speed of 66,000 miles per hour. Remember, it has to get all the way, it only has a year to get around there. So it has to get all the way around the sun. It's going at 66,000 miles an hour to be able to do that. Now, once you get to these numbers, the mind starts to boggle. But the fastest that an aircraft has ever traveled, this was the X-15 rocket aircraft, it managed to go at 4,500 miles per hour. So we're going substantially faster just sitting here in Seattle than the fastest person in the X-15 rocket ship was able to go. But there's more, right? Because not only is the Earth going around the sun, but we're in this, giant galaxy called the Milky Way. And the Milky Way itself is spinning. And it's, trying to get your mind around that with the billions of planets in the Milky Way, the billions of stars, that whole thing's spinning. But it's spinning right now at a speed of 483,000 miles per hour. So now, there's no way you can even imagine that. I mean, think of a giant ship trying to spin like that. It's crazy. But there's more, right? Even the entire Milky Way is being flung out into space, and it's going at the incredible speed of 1.3 million miles per hour. So I think all of this is awesome. In the biblical sense of awesome, right? In the sense of terrifying, in the sense of huge forces acting around us, in the sense of if you want to feel small, just think about those forces involved in the number of planets and being thrown around in the Milky Way. So what I want to do right now is talk about some of the so one night when C.S. Lewis was staying up late with Tolkien, they were having a discussion about mythology. And during that discussion about mythology, C.S. Lewis wrote, the story of Christ is simply a true myth. A myth working on us in the same way as the others, but with this tremendous difference that it really happened. So it's a myth, it's a powerful myth, it grips us, because, not only does it have the mythology and the same sort of things as Narnia in it, but it's also something that, for believers, is, something powerful and true. So what I wanted to do here was just take a moment and compare some of the passages in the Bible against the way, that scientists understand the world. Because my goal here is to try to show you that the way the world actually is just as awesome as the way that's described in the Bible. So let's start with, the most famous passage from the Bible. Let's start with Genesis. Everyone knows this one, but I have to repeat it anyway for the sake of comparison. So in the biblical creation myth, it starts like this in Genesis 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, let there be light. Yeah, we got to get the let there be light. And there was light. Okay, so that's the opening of Genesis, right? So what I did is I went over to the Big History Project, which, by the way, if you haven't been to the Big History Project, great website, great project. The Big History Project, I pulled out the description of the beginning of the universe from the Big History Project. I want to read that to you. Now keep in mind that with the biblical verses, we've had 2,700 years of poetry and art and all that. So it's, it has maximum impact. So this was written, a couple of years ago. But keeping that in mind, here's the description of the beginning of the universe given by the Big History Project. Try to imagine something unimaginably tiny, unimaginably dense, and unimaginably hot. Then instantaneously, bang! Space, time, and all molecular material explode in a manner far beyond what words can describe. So this is pretty dramatic. I think it's dramatic. You have the singularity before the universe existed at all, before there was space and time. And then all of a sudden you have this explosion into the universe that we see around us. So I think that holds up pretty well against the biblical account. Or let's look at another passage in the Bible. This is a favorite one, the flood, right? And here's the description of the flood from Genesis again. The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. The Lord regretted that he had made human beings on the earth, and his heart was deeply troubled. So the Lord said, I will wipe them from the face of the earth, the human race I have created, and with them the animals, the birds. What do the birds ever do? I don't know why the birds have to get wiped out too, but anyway. The birds, the creatures that move along the ground, for I regret that I have made them, right? So, and then, Noah builds his ark, and the rest is history. So the equivalent story, of course, from a scientific viewpoint, would be the extinction of the dinosaurs, right, during the Cretaceous period. And here's I just pulled this from a popular science journal. Here's the same description of the same, type of event. A meteor with the mass of Mount Everest strikes the Caribbean near the Yucatan Peninsula. The collision occurs at such great speed that the force releases a fireball across the planet. Fiery debris falls from the sky everywhere, and afterwards the dust-sized particles remain aloft far higher than the tops of the tallest clouds. Far higher, therefore, than the sky and the weather might rain them out. The veil of dust blocks the sun over the entire earth, and winter settles in unbroken for perhaps 3 years. Again, pretty awesome stuff, right? Pretty awesome stuff. So this one event, of course, resulted in the death of 75% of all the species on Earth. I mean, I wouldn't want to be in Noah's flood, but I also wouldn't want to be around when the asteroid hit the Earth. Both of those would be really, really bad and terrifying. Last example from the Bible. Everyone loves the end of days. So let me take that out of the Bible. The passage in the Bible, one of the passages, sounds like this. The sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from the sky, and the heavenly bodies will be shaken. At that time, the Son of Man will appear in the sky, and all the nations of the earth will mourn. They will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of the sky with power and great glory. And he will send his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, and the one end of the heavens to the other. Okay, again, sounds, horrible. The equivalent thing from, again, this is just taken from a popular scientific magazine about the end of the earth. Billions of years in the future, when our sun bloats up into a red giant, it will expand to consume the earth's orbit. The heating sun will evaporate the earth's oceans away, and then solar radiation will blast away the hydrogen from the water. The earth will never have oceans again. It will eventually become molten. So that sounds pretty bad. Okay, so, again, the point of bringing all this up is, I fully understand the fear that science and reason would rob, the world of all of its awesomeness. But I don't think that has to be true. I think a scientific understanding of the world allows you to be able to appreciate the awesomeness in the same way, just a slightly different way without the magic. I think one of the reasons that people in the religious community often worry about science is they think it's all already done, that science has, completely figured out everything. And I think sometimes the scientists themselves who mislead people, there have been periods of human history, right, where scientists have thought that they've discovered everything. For example, in medieval times, the medieval scholastics, they thought, Aristotle had figured everything out. It's just a matter of reading Aristotle, and then you'll figure out, everything you need to know. In the late 1800s, classical physicists thought Newton had figured everything out, and the rest was just details, right? You just had to do additional calculations, and everything else would make sense. And even as recently as the year 2000, Stephen Hawking predicted there'd be a theory of everything by the year 2000. Well, hello, it's 2015. We still don't have our theory of everything. There is I think the problem is that sometimes people think that, University of Washington is what, just over there, that there's some guy in a lab coat who you could just walk over to right now and he has the answers for everything. But the fact of the matter is that's so far from the truth, right? There's just a ton of mystery in the world that science hasn't explained yet, and there's always the unexpected discovery. For example, right here in Seattle, just a couple of months ago, they discovered for the first time using the Kepler telescope, they discovered over 1,000 Earth-like planets that they were able to see. And more importantly, they found one planet, it's called Kepler 438b, that's a Goldilocks-like planet. So it's not too hot, not too cold, it can have liquid water and sustain life. And now they're making predictions that, just in the Milky Way, there could be 40 billion planets that could support life. And I find that, and that's a recent discovery. That was in January. It was announced here by the American Astronomical Society. It was announced in Seattle. That is a unexpected, awesome discovery. If I can, think of, and that happens all the time, right? In science, that there are surprises. People discover new things. So I just want to end with the thought that we really don't need magic for wonder and awe. Sitting here, right here in Seattle, it's important to never forget that we live in a world that's beautiful, that's unexpected, and that's pretty awesome.